All right, next question up says, can you explain the relationship between the competition lifts and the assistance and supplemental lifts as the intensity of the competition lifts goes up and down? For example, does the intensity of the supplement and assistance go up with the competition lifts in order to get more of a training stimulus, or do they go down to maximize the recovery? Well, it depends on the training group and the training strategy that's employed with that group. You'll notice a lot of different things going on. Lots of different strategies have merit, and some of them work in some situations. Some of them are better for some situations than others. In general, you're going to see a generally, I don't want to say that things are going to move together. But for most training groups, they do tend to go in the same direction. So if you start with the competition lift and you note that the intensity of the competition lift goes up over time, as is standard in just about any training program. What we do with the intensity for the assistance and the supplemental lifts is that the intensity, for most groups, is going to move generally up. It won't go up in lockstep with the competition lift, and it may not go up quite to the same degree, but it will generally move in that direction. So if the competition lift's going like this, maybe the assistance and supplemental lifts are kind of going like this, So there's more variability, and generally the intensity is not going as hard in that direction. Generally, you keep in mind that when you're assessing the intensity of an assistance or supplemental lift with regard to a competition lift, you need to take into account the specificity of the movement that you're doing. It's not just the relative intensity in that movement pattern that determines the specificity. It's the movement pattern itself plus the intensity. So it's kind of a complex idea, I guess, or a complicated idea. And there's interplay between those different factors. So those are just some things that you'll want to keep in mind. And again, that's true for most training groups. Not all of them. Some training groups, for example, will see a linear progression of the competition lift, but maybe the assistance and supplemental lifts are designed to be really low intensity, high rep, high volume work. So for example, if you're a kind of person that's interested in both strength and hypertrophy at the same time, we can kind of kill both of those goals with one training strategy. So the training strategy would be a little bit more appropriate in a situation like that. Again, it depends on the situation, depends on the training group. But in general, that's kind of what you're going to see. Outside of some, more specific, maybe I guess we could say more specialized training groups, you're going to see things moving generally the same direction, although they won't start and end in the same place. One other factor that you might want to consider is that especially early on in the cycle, when the intensity in the competition lifts is very low, you may actually see higher percentages in the assistance lifts. Not really in the supplemental lifts because that's a bit further removed, but in the assistance lifts, you may actually see higher percentages. Now, after you kind of factor in the specificity of the movement that's being trained, maybe it's not so high intensity. Maybe it's not so high specificity. But then again, maybe it is. Again, it depends on the training group, because we've got a bunch of different training groups with a bunch of different training strategies all running kind of at the same time. So it's harder to answer questions like this with a lot of clarity. So I apologize about that.